This show is not intended for the politically correct or the close-minded. Enter at the risk of opening your eyes. You have been warned.
Why does the media attack an issue? To get primetime ratings?
In my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
A moment comes when we step out from the old to the new, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
To kind of catapult the propaganda.
You are listening to Open Eyes with your host, Ira Robinson. From the normal to the paranormal, from government cover-ups to the depths of our consciousness, we aim to explore all things. From the dawn of prehistory to current events, no topic is forbidden and nothing remains hidden.
No more secrets.
Open your eyes and open your mind to the fact that life as we know it is not as we have been taught. Join us at LateNightInTheMidlands.com or OpenEyesNetwork.com as we take this brief journey through the depths of the cosmos and explore what it really means to be human.
Many peoples have sacrificed their liberties, only to learn to their sorrow that deceit and mockery, poverty and tyranny are their reward.
Whether you're online or offline, intercontinental or intergalactic, hello and welcome to Open Eyes. Today is Wednesday, April 29th, 2015, and we have a great show in store for you guys tonight. This is going to be a very special episode. If you guys cannot tell, we are actually doing it live, broadcasting live and in person. Yay! Today is my 100th episode. So we wanted to do something a little bit special for you guys. Tonight we will be taking phone calls from you listeners out there. The phone number is 260-494-3937. I will ask you to please wait until after we take our first break. And when you call in, please have yourself muted so that nobody hears you going on until we bring you onto the call. Tonight we also have a series of experts, you could say. Our expert panel. We are having a great conversation tonight with Ryan Gable, the host of The Secret Teachings, which you can find here on Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And his website is thesecretteachings.info. We also have Joe Long, my longtime companion and co-host on our show together, Brothers at Arms, which airs on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. So, Ryan, Joe, are you guys there?
I am.
Yeah. Yep.
I knew that was going to happen.
I did too. Ryan, hello.
Hey, Ira. Hey, Joe. How you guys doing?
Doing well, doing well.
Hopefully up for a fabulous evening tonight.
Oh, always.
So tonight...
we'll be on for 5 straight hours tonight, Ira.
We will, yes, because we're both going to be on together during the last frequency, which is going to air right after this show ends. And we'll have Michael Vera with us as well. Tonight, we are going to cover the topic of Baltimore, and we'll probably get into a couple of other topics as well as things progress, but we definitely wanted to talk about the issues that are going on in Baltimore and the insanity that's there, as well as the really weird, occultic, esoteric kind of things that Ryan and I have discovered are sort of underlying everything. So, Ryan, if you don't mind, why don't you get us started on some of the things that led us into discovering these weirdnesses that are with all of it?
Well, one of the best examples I think I can give is if we look at concepts of energy and we look at multiple dimensions and we look at symbolisms, we can start to see a connection of dots that if we don't connect the dots, these seemingly unconnected people, places, events, names, stories don't really make a lot of sense, and it can kind of make the world look sort of strange. It can make the world look very scary. But when we start to connect seemingly unconnected people, places, events, names, putting together histories of certain events or people, or the etymologies of terms where words come from, looking at different symbols that are used, and we can start to actually connect those dots, we see that there's a lot more to reality than meets the eye. You know, a lot of people, as soon as they're born, it's almost like literally they're handed a script. This is what you believe, and this is what they're programmed with. And others, like myself and like you guys, we seem to have we've walked off stage, and we no longer are reading from a script. And everybody looks at us and they say, "Well, what are you doing? You're breaking character. You know, this isn't entertaining anymore. This is becoming, we're having to have this responsibility to do something about the way the world is." And you and I were talking the other day as all of this stuff with Baltimore was going down. And the first thing that came to my mind was I was speaking to a friend of mine about I wouldn't say a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I said to them, I said, look, I guarantee you, we had got into a discussion about occult holidays and the witch's calendar, the wheel of the year. And I said, check this out. And I showed them my book, and I showed them the list in my book that I had compiled from mid-April to May 1st, the different events that's taken place within this time span, from Waco to the Virginia Tech shooting, the Boston Marathon bombing, the Battle of Lexington Concord, the foundation of the Bavarian Illuminati, the sailing of the Lusitania from port before it was sank and the U.S. entered into the First World War, the mission accomplished speech by George Bush at the end of the Iraq War, and even the death of Osama bin Laden being announced on May 1st, and then the invasion of Iraq on May 1st. All this stuff kind of came together to me when I was writing my first book, and I have done shows on it. And I put these pieces together, and I told my friend, I said, look, I guarantee you, not because I'm predicting it, because I'm smarter than anybody, but just simply because I'm looking at the past, and I'm saying that, look, if history says this is going to happen, then likely if we follow that trend, this is probably what's going to happen in the future. It gives us a better lens to look at the future with. And I said, you're going to see a story about fire, about destruction, something along those lines that will be in the news. Like, what was it, last year or the year before last, we had the explosion at that propane plant or whatever it was, which was very close to Waco.
Down in Texas, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in Texas, right? So it was all about fire. And they said, okay, well, we'll see. And lo and behold, here's the big story in Baltimore. And a lot of the news stories we see, I've got a headline here, live video, fire burn, National Guard activated, Baltimore. Fires burn in Baltimore. All these stories about fire, right during this Beltane week from roughly April 18th to May 1st. It's a 13-day period. Some people use it for sacrifice to summon and conjure malevolent deities. Other people use it as a worship of the regenerative qualities of the earth, the different cycles of the year. It's the midpoint between the spring equinox, Ostara, and the summer solstice, Letha. And there's certain significances to different people. To wrap up what my thoughts were, while you and I were talking, Ira, we were starting to get into the symbolisms of Baltimore. Of course, Baltimore is B-A-L, Baal, fire god, or Bel, as in Beltane, the Beltane festival, Walpurgis night coming up on the 29th and the 30th. And we were talking about this in relationship to past mass shootings that had taken place during this time period. One of them was outside of this time period. It happened in, I think it was June or July, the Colorado shooting with James Holmes.
Yeah.
And they brought him.
That was July 12th.
Yeah.
July 12th. Okay. And they brought him up in the news again, guys, during this whole Baltimore thing, and saying that he's declared sane. And they bring that attention back to that event. So everybody's remembering it, kind of like Boston Strong, remember 9/11. And during that event, I remember, because that was the month of the opening ceremony of the Olympics. That month, James Holmes was big in the news. A couple of days later, there was the shooting at the Sikh temple. The man that shot up the Sikh temple, he shot 7 people up at a temple where 7 years ago to that day, 7 more people were killed by another gunman. He lived on East Holmes Street. And then the next story we saw in the news that was kind of big was the fact that the Olympic torch was being lit at the Olympics, and that it was 7 people, 7 kids representing different regions of the world. They lit this flaming torch, the cauldron that unified the world, with a big flaming flaming bird, the thunderbird, the Bennu bird, or what we call the phoenix. And the name of the woman who carried the torch, her name was Kelly Dame Holmes. So we had a Holmes connection across the board. And that's the kind of symbolism and connection that Ira, you and I kind of put together about Baltimore. And of course, as more stuff happens, we're going to see more and more of this come into the light. No pun intended, I guess, with the relation to Beltane and the fire sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. It was definitely the hatch that we opened that led down to the rabbit hole underneath. And we have definitely gone through a lot of those tunnels to lead us to what we're bringing you guys tonight. This has been a very interesting experience, to say the least. And I don't mean interesting as in a good thing. It's more interesting as in the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. That's sort of what we see with all of this. I wanted to, I guess, dive right in to some of the weird things with it. The first thing, I guess, like we'll start with the history that we've discovered with all of this. During this time period in 1863, the first deaths in the American Civil War took place. It was during this basically time period, this 2-week time period within April 1863. Those first deaths happened in Baltimore, Maryland, and they occurred when there were clashes going on between mobs of protesters, the Baltimore police, and soldiers who were going through the area. So what do we see right now happening in Baltimore, the situation that's happening there? We see mobs of protesters, we see them clashing with police officers, and now we see hordes of soldiers moving in.
And how this all transpired, remember, you and I were talking, Ira, and I said, I wonder if historically anything's ever happened in not Boston, excuse me, is anything's ever happened in Baltimore where in the same area of Baltimore there's a historical event that took place, some type of, shooting, bombing, war, battle, something that happened. There's like an energy vortex there, and then you take that into consideration, you did a little research, and boom, you come up with this.
Yeah, exactly. And it led right into the whole thing. Now, one thing that I found was really interesting going into more of how the cycles of history again are going through all of this. One of the main people that was involved in that whole situation was named George William Brown. And now you see all of the correlations going on with Baltimore. They constantly go into, this is reminiscent of Michael Brown over in Ferguson, Michael Brown. You hear this over and over. So it's definitely something to this idea of history literally repeating itself, just different faces in different places, but it's still the same taint of history going on.
Well, that comes back to Sun Tzu, Ira. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Precisely. And that was true then, and it's very true now.
And the thing about all this that I'm seeing in doing my own research after you and I talked a few days ago is that, yes, it is patterns. The patterns have been repeating now for going on 200 years. And that's exactly what the Dark Masters are wanting. The Illuminati, and this smacks of more of the Rothschild Illuminati than it does of any other group, because they are very much in tune with the mystic and the mystic forces more than economic or socio-political.
I can definitely see that as well. That is something that's occurred to me, as if there is a group that could be attributed to it, it might be connected to them. Although I do think in the end of things, it's actually more in depth than just the idea of attributing these things to the Rothschilds or to the Rockefellers or anything along those lines.
Well, I think it's both.
Even to the Illuminati,
the
it goes much deeper than that. I think that there are entities that are behind this whole thing that are orchestrating these things to go on in order to feed what they consider to be their old gods. Honestly, that's what I think. What do you think?
Somebody that we haven't seen, somebody that hasn't poked their nose from behind the curtain yet.
Right. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Well, that's actually what I had mentioned to you when we were talking about the historical aspects of it and making all of the symbolic connections and trying to connect the dots. We were discussing that exact thing, is that I think that there's some type of force, I guess is the only way that I could say it. I don't want to put any other terminology, any other definition, any other label to it. I guess people just use their imaginations, if you will. And that is that there's something going on where there's just, for me, I know that you can look at a situation, like if you go into a paranormal investigation and you look for evidence to find a ghost, you'll probably find evidence to suggest there's a ghost there, even if it's just some leaky pipes upstairs. If you go into an investigation looking for any form of evidence and ignoring the evidence that you actually do find, because you have this preconceived idea, I understand that you're going to find the evidence you want to find. The problem is, in looking at history, and I predicted that this basically, something like this would happen, not where it would happen, what would happen. I just knew that there'd be something big in the news about fire, death, and chaos, basically, because these are the gods of chaos. And I mentioned to you, I said, you know what? It just seems to me there's no possible way that this can be a coincidence, that all of the names, all of the associations, all of the symbols, the location, all of it just correlates so well with everything we have studied and know about the occult and the people that use these occultic symbols for a very negative reason to gain power. They use these for sacrificial purposes. And, the one thing about this that really got me is that the end of, we'll get into this, I'm sure, more on my show this Saturday and maybe even tonight on the Last Frequency. I can tell you right now, there's a royal family connection to this as well. Even I know Jolene found that one of the streets where the protests were taking place was called Windsor.
Yes.
I guarantee you there's a royal connection to this, because during that 2012 Olympic ceremony, during the time of the blood sacrifice in Aurora, this is when the royal baby George was born on a rare astronomical alignment, actually multiple rare astronomical alignments. His father, Prince William, his birth was induced to coincide with the summer solstice, and George, his son, his birth was induced to correlate with the Sothic rising of Sirius, a high Egyptian Sumerian New Year. And now we hear during this time that Kate Middleton is late by 4 days, and that they're going to induce labor to have this baby born within the next couple of days, maybe even on May 1st, the end of this sacrificial period. May Day. The mother, I mean, where's Baltimore at? Baltimore's in Maryland. The mother, Maryland, next to Virginia. And there's a lot of correlations here, and I think there's a royal connection as well, part of this mass ritual.
I do too. You look at I was going into the etymology of some of the names that are involved in this whole situation, and you look at the instance of the mayor herself. Her name is Stephanie Rawlins Blake. If you go into the etymology of the name, the name Stephanie is defined as crown. Okay, so that is the one. The name Rowlings is etymologically derived from the name Roland. Roland is of the meaning famous landowner or homeland. Okay, so and then the Blake is a Celtic word. It comes from black, the Celtic word literally meaning those of dark hair. So with all of this, there is so much that we've been seeing that is related to yes, the royal family for sure, relating to history, relating to the idea of Mary, relating to Beltane, Ball, any of those. They're all one and the same, basically. They're just all different names, basically, for the same entity that's back there.
Yeah, it's your intention behind invoking or conjuring these.
Right,
exactly.
And then also a really deep something going on with numbers, such as the number 4 and 40, and all of the things that are going on with all of that.
Oh, I could tell you all about that. You really dug into the etymology of the names. I dug into the number 4. We really hit a couple key areas. Joe, what do you think about all of this? You haven't said much.
Well, I've been sitting back and listening to two experts, which is something I enjoy doing. I've dug into as Ira and I were talking about this and me coming on the show with you guys tonight, the thing that kind of struck me was Beltane, the Feast of Beltane and Beltane himself. as most of the listeners to Irish Show know, I am a Druid. So this is something that is very close to me. Now, the Feast of Beltane, as it was originally intended, was a blessing and was to protect the summer crops. It's when the herdsmen would put their cattle or sheep out to their summer pastures, and they would go through this Feast of Beltane and this ritual of lighting sacred bonfires to invoke a protective spirit on those animals. And the fires of the hearth were extinguished on the night of Beltane and relit from these bonfires to provide protection for the home. Now, the people that are doing these rituals now are perverting what the Feast of Beltane and what Beltane himself was actually supposed to be, which really aggravates the snot out of me as a Druid.
What we see now, what the Feast of Beltane basically has now become, is a sacrifice of the old for the young in one way, shape, or form.
Right.
And one thing that I noticed was really interesting. Sorry, Joe, just let me finish my thought here. One thing that I noticed was really interesting as far as the events over the past few days is concerned is that the big fire that was being paid attention to was a senior center that was built for, older folks by a Baptist church, $60 million facility. So in that instance right there, you can see that through the fire, something old was being sacrificed for the young, or even by the young, essentially.
That's right. And also fires are considered to be portals into other dimensions. Fires can be used as a portal to invoke certain entities.
Absolutely.
And it's actually, I don't know if there's an etymological connection, but with the god Beltane or Baal or Baal, in correlation with invoking spirits and invoking entities through fire sacrifice, using fire as a portal, bells, like actual bells, were used by some pagan groups to invoke certain goddesses as well through the fire, as a portal in some cases. So the literal bell is also used as a summoning device as well. So then we have the symbolism or the etymological connection between that and the mythological being and the god that we're talking about, as in Baal, Bel, or the Beltane Festival, and Baltimore. So that was an interesting correlation as well.
And Baal as well, by the way, is also connected to Molech. They basically were one and the same. They were just worshipped as different names in the same areas, basically.
And when you look at it, regardless of what anybody thinks, and there's very little, I've researched it for years, there's very little substantial evidence to write a definitive narrative of what happens at Bohemian Grove. There is some video footage of what Alex Jones had when he snuck in, but there's still very little evidence to show like a really definitive understanding of what happens there. But there is the 40-foot stone owl. The owl sees the darkness of night. It was chosen by a lot of societies because it can see through the darkness, see through the lies. That's been distorted, twisted, manipulated, and turned by the lords of chaos, if you will. The owl is also a holy guardian. Aleister Crowley called the goddess of destruction Lilith the holy guardian angel, which is really the angel Gabriel. Isis, this is related to the all-seeing eye on the tip of the pyramid. She has her all-seeing eye on you. She can see everything. She tempts men in their dreams. She sacrifices babies. She's the god of demons. And she was protected, Lilith was. She was cast out of the garden for refusing to be submissive to the chaotic nature of man. And she was demonized by the then male culture. So she was portrayed as tempting men and killing their babies and things like that. And she is actually depicted in Sumeria as being guarded by two owls. And the owl is a representation of Moloch, or vice versa. And when you look at what happens at Bohemian Grove, I mean, just the name in itself, Behemoth is a monstrous kind of a demon-like creature in some descriptions and depictions. And the Moloch owl at Bohemian Grove, this is on video, where they dress in red and green and different color robes, which represent certain aspects of nature. And they would use either a real, body or an effigy, whatever the case was, and they would put it on a black stone altar in front of the owl. These are world leaders, businessmen, politicians, media moguls, and all the like. Here at Bohemian Grove, they put this effigy in front of the black stone altar in front of the owl, and they burn it as a sacrificial rite to the god Molech, or basically Baal or Bel. I mean, I think that these entities are the same ones, the God of the Old Testament, sacrificing your son to me. I mean, that's where all of this really comes from, I think. It's a different God than the New Testament and a different God than most people believe in.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track with something right there. Well, listen, guys, actually, we need to take a break here real quick. Let's go ahead and do this here first. When we come back, we're going to definitely get more into all of this. We haven't even scratched the surface of everything that has been found so far regarding all of this. So stick around with us, guys. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And when we come back, we will take calls, 260-494-3937. Stick around with us. We'll be right back.
The L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you.
Open Eyes looks for the truth in all things, no matter where it may lead. Whether it is the paranormal, government cover-ups, the dark agenda that the puppet masters are bringing to this world, or aliens and UFOs, no subject is taboo or off limits. Listen to Open Eyes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on the L&M Network at LateNightInTheMidlands.com or OpenEyesNetwork.com, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Open hearts, open minds, open eyes. Fear. There is always so much to fear. So many shadows are just waiting for the moment for when we pay no attention at all. Just waiting for the moment when they can grab us and make us come undone. Fear takes, and fear gives nothing in return. But there is one gift in this life that fear is afraid of. The gift of love. Reach out for someone today. Fear nothing, for fear is nothing. Live hard.
At The Secret Teachings, we are not a part of any group, label, and we do not attempt to fearmonger. Some of the topics we discuss may seem scary, so I advise you not to be afraid, but to be informed as we discuss current events and ancient history, astrotheology and symbolism, the paranormal and the occult, the esoteric, health, and much more. I am not here to tell you that what I say is truth, but to allow you to decide for yourself based on the evidence presented and the dots connected. Information is not negative. It is how you view it that determines the dimensional characteristics of either dual aspect of negativity or positivity. Try as you might, but no amount of disinformation, propaganda, rhetoric, or trolling will change the truth. The truth is the truth, regardless if the masses accept it as is, or if it is accepted by only 1 out of billions. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. For more information on airtimes and free downloads of past episodes of The Secret Teachings, you can visit www.thesecretteachings.info. That's thesecretteachings.info.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson, and I want to thank you guys for sticking around through that break. We have tonight special guests, Joe Long, who is my longtime companion and co-host on Brothers at Arms, which airs on Thursdays, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as Ryan Gable, who is the host of The Secret Teachings, which can be found at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as his website, thesecretteachings.info. Before we took the break, guys, we were getting in a little bit into the weird woo-woo kind of stuff that is surrounding all of this stuff over in Baltimore. And we kind of mentioned...
Such a way with words, brother.
Thank you. We were kind of mentioning the issue of the numbers, and I would like for Ryan, if you don't mind, get us started a little bit on some of the number things that you've found regarding all of this.
So the numbers, this was something that was pretty significant to me. I'm always a big number guy, but symbols can be found in many forms, colors, animals, of course, numbers are symbols, but symbols are very important to me because they can convey so many different meanings to, vast numbers of people. There's an intended meaning, there's an esoteric meaning, and there's a perceptual meaning, as well as other different forms. And when I looked at this situation, I took a learning experience from past investigations, if you will. And when I say investigation, I just mean, reading what's in the mainstream news, doing a little alternative research for myself, and then studying a little bit of the esoteric and occult side of what's not talked about in the news. And then, of course, just using common sense. And I used some of those old investigations and looked at this story about Baltimore. And in the past, there's other events that happen during these stories where they kind of correlate together. And during this situation in Baltimore, of course, you had the situation with James Holmes brought back into the mix. You had the relation to Ferguson brought back into the mix. But I thought about Beltane and I thought about fire, and I started looking into the news and I remembered, in Chile, there was that volcano that erupted. And the headline of the volcano story on CNN was this was the first eruption in 40 years. Okay, it was the first eruption in 40 years. And I thought, okay. And I just read it on a little bit more. And it said that a 12-mile exclusion zone was established around the crater of this volcano, military and police forces were assisting with the evacuations of more than 4,400 residents, the Interior Ministry said. So I saw two different set of numbers there. I saw 40 years since the last eruption, and then 4,400 residents had been evacuated. Then I thought about, well, what else is in the news? And immediately I typed in Nepal earthquake because of that earthquake that happened. And what did I find? The first headline that came up was Nepal quake death toll tops 4,000. So I saw 40 years, 4,400 residents, and 4,000 death toll in Nepal. And I thought that there has to be some type of additional significance with this number 40. So I looked in to what was going on in Baltimore, and you and I were talking, Ira. Jolene was doing some research on this as well. And we found a couple of things. We found that the Maryland State Police originally sent 40 troops into the city, according to one of the top aides to the governor, Larry Hogan. So they sent 40 troops in originally. And the other news story, which I found was really strange, was that they focused specifically on the cancellation of public schools. And they say that in Anne Arundel County, the cancellation affects exactly 40 planned trips by schools ranging from elementary to high school.
Which had no intention of meaning to the story at all. It just was a random factoid that they threw out that just, quote unquote, happened to have 40 in the number.
Exactly. I mean, it didn't really make any sense to me, but overall, and I haven't really come to a conclusion on this. Perhaps I will by this weekend when I record my show. We'll do a little more investigation. But initially, I'm looking at this, and there's just a lot of fours, and there's a lot of fire. There's something more important to this. I have that feeling. I know that you saw some significance with this. The number 40 is very important in biblical references. There were 40 days, the great flood. The 40 days between the ascension and resurrection of Jesus, that Jesus fasted for 40 days in the desert. Moses was 40 years old when he was called on by God to, free his people. 40 days, 40 days, 40 days, 40 days, 40, 40, 40, some variation of that number. There's some type of significance to this event in the number 4 or the number 40.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. What happens 40 days from now?
There you go. That's actually a really important question to ask, Joe. I really do think so. Or what happened 40 days ago?
From the initial riots?
From the initial riots.
Yeah.
40 days from the initial start of this sacrificial cycle to Beltane.
That's a good question. Wow, that is a really good question, Joe.
Yeah, there
is a reason you have me around, my brother.
Or what happened 40 days ago that led up to this event here?
Yeah, that's true too.
Exactly.
To get into another set of numbers for you guys, during that American Civil War incident that took place, like I was discussing earlier, there were 4 soldiers that were killed and 36 others injured. So there's the number 4, add the 4 and the 36 together, you've got 40 total casualties that were involved with it. Another one, during an article, sorry, lost track of my brain there. I brain farted. There was also another unneeded mention of distance from Baltimore to the Capitol. They said that schools were closed on Tuesday in the city of 6,200 people, 40 miles from the nation's capital. This is, again,
there's 40 again.
Right. That 40 is right there involved with it all. It's just really interesting. It's really weird. Even if you take that number that they gave the city of 620,000 people, take the 6 minus 2, you've got 4, just on and on and on. There are so many different things that are associated with it. Now, we've also noticed a really big correlation to Mary. Like Mary or a derivative of Mary. And that was one thing that you were really delving into, Ryan, on the Mary stuff. I mean, of course, we have Maryland is where it's all taking place at, to begin with. You have Virginia, which is very close by, tied together basically. And you have the Virgin Mary that is going on there. You have, I mean, just this weird association with all of these different old symbols that have been going on basically through the entirety of our history, if you really get down deep and delve down into it.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, if you go back to some of the mass shootings, for example, we talked about Columbine, and Columbine happened also during this, I guess you could say, ritualistic sacrificial period, April 20th of 1999, and it left 13 people dead, 12 students, one teacher. You see this used a lot in a lot of the mass shootings, like the dates of some of the shootings. One was December 13th, so 12/13. And for example, in Aurora, Colorado, originally the story was that 12 people were shot, then it went to 13 people were shot. 12/13, 12/13, 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 houses of the zodiac.
Well, to toss into that too.
But there is now, according to the new revised zodiac, there's actually 13 houses.
I was just about ready to mention that. Right. What we see is always throughout all of these different numbers, you see 12 being given first and then 1 being added in somehow. So you have like the 12 disciples plus Jesus is 13. You've got 12 plus 1, 13. It's always seeming to be that way. Whenever you see the number 12, eventually somehow 13 is going to be involved with it as well.
Well, that number 13 is regeneration and rebirth. And Jesus, as the number 13 of the 12 disciples, Jesus was killed and resurrected. And that symbolism of the Son, that can even be seen within, like if you look at the name Mary. Mary starts with an M. This is a symbol of a lot of ancient royal families. They use this symbol of the M. Those who believe in the bloodline of Christ, and M is the what letter in the alphabet? The 13th letter.
The 13th letter, but the M is also for the Merovingian line.
There you go as well. That's part of that bloodline. It's not a mistake.
Because it has been long believed that the bloodline of the Christ flows through the Merovingians.
Well, that's an interesting thing as well with that whole Roland thing that I was talking about earlier. Roland, the name, like the most famous used of that Roland name, was basically the most heroic person, the right-hand man of Charlemagne.
Mm-hmm.
So, just tossing
and
that
Charlemagne
out as well.
Was the king of the Merovingians.
Exactly. So, and Charlemagne is also who you can trace back all of the presidents as well as all the royals back to Charlemagne.
To that bloodline, yeah. Mm-hmm. But see, isn't it a little bit, it just makes you sit back and think, doesn't it, guys?
Well, a lot of people say, the number 13 is an unlucky number. Not really.
No, it's not.
The etymology of Friday the 13th being an unlucky date and the number 13 being an unlucky number goes back to the fall of the Templars.
That's right, 1307.
Right, Friday the 13th.
Yeah, October 13th is when it took place.
Right, that was the date that the church, and it was not the Roman Catholic Church. It was, but it wasn't. Because at the time that they took down the Templars, the Holy See was not in Rome. It was in Marseille, France. It was a French pope who'd moved the Holy See to France, and it was King Philip II of France wanted the money and the power that the Templars controlled.
Yep, so they issued the orders to arrest and to execute the Templars. A lot of them did escape Scotland.
The majority of them.
Yeah.
Up to and including, there were two See, I'm a member of Order of Knights that broke away from the Templars long ago, even before their fall. And the main reason that the group that my family has been involved with for many, many generations broke away is the infiltration of the Bavarian Illuminati into the Templar orders.
And hey, when the Bavarian Illuminati was formed was May 1st of 1776.
Mm-hmm.
And that correlates with this Beltane festival as well, whether a coincidence or not.
There is no such thing. There are no coincidences.
Well, believe me, that's what it's like that old adage of, investigative reporters, you're not allowed to believe in coincidence. That's where I'm at.
Exactly. But the thing about it is that, that is to this day is the reason people believe that Friday the 13th and the number 13 is unlucky, is because of that one event.
Yeah.
800 years ago.
It's the association with it. Now, listen, I want to add in too, going into the actual events that are taking place right now in Baltimore. A lot of the stuff that's occurring is happening right near the Inner Harbor, right near downtown area. And one of the main places that the focal point seems to be around is the area of Pratt Street, excuse me, and the Pratt Free Library. The name of those areas are named after a man named Enoch Pratt. Now, we know the derivation of Enoch. We know where that name comes from. You look at the Book of Enoch and all of the things that are associated with it. That's where that name got its beginning from. And then the name Pratt is actually an old French derivation for trickster or cunning person. Going right into what Ryan talks about a lot with the idea of the trickster. So we have in all of this the involvement of the call out, I guess you could say, to Enoch as well as to the trickster being involved with this whole Beltane festival feast, basically, that's going on right now in Baltimore. I mean, you look at the things that go on in Baltimore. Baltimore is all about Beltane. They've basically revived the idea of the Beltane Festival there in Baltimore. And lo and behold, what happens during this week where the Feast of Beltane has been taking place?
Exactly. So, Ryan, you're a fan of Loki, I hear.
Maybe a little bit. At least understanding, what other people write off as being very demonic and satanic. I like to look into I guess you could say Lucifer. You look into the false bearer of light, Prometheus. And what was really interesting to me when I first looked into these deities is that I had always been under the assumption that Prometheus gave fire to man, but really man had fire. The gods took fire away from man. Prometheus brought that fire back and then suffered for mankind in the same way that Jesus did. And there's got to be, and of course, look at Rockefeller Center, some of these elite families, the banking families that run the world. Why would they have this major gold statue of Prometheus bringing knowledge to man if it didn't stand for something that was a little bit darker?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, exactly.
One question that came in from the chat, I'd like to ask you guys, for either of you. Do you guys know where the Knights Templars started through, basically like derived from or started by any of the Viking or maybe Norse tribes, like that they got their start through those tribes?
No, not at all. The Knights Templar, they take their name was the Knights of the Temple of Solomon, and they just shortened it to Templars. It was 7 knights dispatched by it was an English king, and I can't remember which one at the time. It was Richard, I believe it was Richard II, to protect pilgrims on the road between England and Jerusalem.
And if I remember right, these knights volunteered originally.
Yes.
And they were headquartered in Solomon's stables. They were given quarters in the ruins of Solomon's stables
and
under the Temple Mount.
They were actually given that by choice. They were originally given very large, lush accommodations, and they said, no, we want to be basically as Christ, born in the stables, basically. So they wanted to associate themselves as much with that Christ image as they could, basically.
Yeah, they were known, the other name is the Poor Knights of Christ, in order to gain. See, the thing about it was, in order to gain admission into the order, you had to relinquish your land and your wealth and pledge an allegiance to Jesus Christ. A lot of scholars see that as these knights were very poor. But I mean, I've seen it that the knights might have been poor on the outside, but
they were poor. They were worldly poor. They were spiritually rich.
Spiritually rich, but also I think I've come to the conclusion that the order became very wealthy.
Yes, because they were given all the wealth. Yeah, they were given all the wealth.
And it was actually a papal decree from Pope Honorius II in 1128 that officially formed the Knights as a military order to protect the pilgrims. But they were given safe haven on the remains of Solomon's Temple. That's where they became the Poor Knights of Christ of Solomon's Temple. That name was later shortened into the Poor Knights of Christ and then the Knights Templar.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the 7 original knights, in doing improvements to the stables, discovered something. There's been much talk over the centuries of what they found. Some say it was treasure, some say it was many different things. But whatever they found scared the church to its core. And there was a papal decree literally granting the Knights Templar unprecedented power. They were literally a law unto themselves. They reported to no king. They were a law and almost a state unto themselves. Now, in my own research, I believe I know exactly what they found. I believe Dan Brown had it was very, very close to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That they found the remains of Mary, and they found what has been known as the San Real documents, literally transcribing the bloodline of Jesus Christ. That is still an active and viable bloodline, ladies and gentlemen.
I think why
that's a show for another time.
Yeah, it's a big show.
That's a huge show.
It's important to understand this history, the significance of Mary, the significance of the bloodline families, in order to kind of grasp the significance of what we're talking about within these stories of the fire and the stories that relate to the Virgin and relate to Mary. If we don't understand the history of it, then this isn't going to have much significance. We have to see that there are certain people, very powerful peoples whose bloodlines can be traced back to the first kings, queens, emperors, and lords, and they have a belief system that even if you don't have that belief system, they have this belief system that what they're doing is right, and they will do anything that they can to protect that belief system, and they will do anything they can to maintain the power that they have. And I think that certain situations like this, I think 9/11 was a ritual. I think the 2012 London Olympics was a ritual. And I think that this is some form of ritual, or at least being portrayed and used as one to divert people's attention towards what's happening, to obtain all that fear, anxiety, stress, and worry about what's taking place in Baltimore. And that energy is siphoned off into another dimensional plane by these energy vampires.
Yes, you and I talked about this the other night, Ryan, and I am in total agreement with you with this. To kind of explain it to people, and by the way, if anybody does want to call in, you can call in. It's 260-494-3937. Just mute yourself when you call in so that we can bring you in when we're ready for you. But in the conversation that we had the other night, this basically kind of lays out my belief on how this kind of stuff works. There are entities that are out there. They're very dark entities. There are light entities as well, but there are these entities out there that are very dark, very nasty critters, okay? And they have essentially invaded our realm of things and put into the history here symbology that's relating to them, that they have basically claimed as their own. And when we see soldiers going out onto the battlefield, and they're wearing all these different symbols on themselves, they're all these occultic symbols that are relating to these different entities. So they go out, they do a kill. They kill somebody, or they injure somebody, or they cause destruction in one way or another. That negative energy that took that action, that action created basically, is used. It's sacrificed to these entities that have tied themselves to these various symbols. And the same goes for the police officers. Whether or not you understand this or not, guys, the police officers are also wearing very occultic symbols when they're out there in the field doing their thing. The badge that they're wearing, it's a direct occultic symbol.
It's a 6-pointed star, which is the number and the star of Saturn, which is Satan.
Yes, exactly. So we see these different occultic actions that are happening, and people just they blow it off and say, well, that doesn't mean anything. but they don't understand the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. What's underneath the surface of all of this stuff? And that's what we're seeing happening right now. Everybody is focused on this ritual that is taking place in Baltimore. They're worried, they're upset, they're angry, they're I mean worldwide, right? There's all of this division that's being created. And so in the end of things, what's happening is basically we're feeding these negative entities that are out there doing these rituals in order to get fed. That's the cause of it.
This is something you and I have discussed and actually battled for the last 18 years now that we've known each other.
About that, yeah.
These are things that you and I have actively investigated, actively sought out to actually give them battle, to try to remove them from our plane of existence. It's not easy, especially after, if they're feeding on the negative emotions that are around them. They're not easy to dispel. The only way that you really can dispel them is to deny them food.
Not be scared.
Exactly.
Not be compliant in these agendas of mass genocide and deception, and think for yourself and stop falling into these traps and being tricked and just people are so ruled by the lords, if you will, of chaos and distortion, and everything is so backwards that when we can present to you dots that if otherwise we're not connected, wouldn't make sense. When we can present to you what we're discussing here on the show today, it seems like what we're talking about is distorted and overturned, when in reality, the lords of chaos, if you will, they are the ones that have distorted this reality. And when we try to make things look sane, it makes us look insane because things are already turned upside down.
They're very tricky. The best way I can put it is the meme that always goes around, don't feed the trolls. Well, that's exactly what it is. These guys are trolls underneath the bridges. They're feeding on the fear and the anger and the upset and all of the things that are associated with it. And the best way to do it is to laugh in their faces. Just don't be scared about all the things that you see, and don't fall into the deceptions that they're putting into place for you to be deceived by. It's as simple as that.
And I have another important piece here that you and I were talking about, Ira. If you go to dictionary.com, for example, and I just thought that this was an interesting correlation. Maybe I'm stretching. If you look at the mall that where a lot of these protests were taking place in Baltimore, it's called the Mondawmin Mall. Is that how you pronounced it?
Mondawmin, yeah.
Mondawmin, okay. Now, you were telling me about the Mondawmin, which is the Miami maize deity, correct?
Yes, the Miami deity is the corn god, basically, and that's what the mall was named after.
Okay, now when you look at the mall logo is an 8-pointed star, and I did some research on the 8-pointed star, and it has a reference. From my understanding, the 8-pointed star has a reference to the turtle. Now, you were telling me that the turtle is a very sacred figure in Native American lore.
Absolutely.
Representation of Mother Earth. Some people believe that the universe was formed on the turtle's back, and it plays an important part in the creation myths. And what I found that was really interesting is that when I typed in Baltimore, for example, into the dictionary, Baltimore is actually a type of butterfly, which maybe could be symbolic of the Project Monarch MK Ultra programs. And here's the definition it gave me, and this really stood out to me because we were talking about the turtle having an actual significance in terms of a relationship. Certain native tribes claim that the turtle is a version of God. And the dictionary says that Baltimore is a black nymphalid butterfly characterized by orange, red, yellow, and white markings, common in areas of northeastern U.S. And one of the, I guess it's like a type of plant called turtle head, and that's the food plant of the larva for these for these butterflies. Now,
so the children of the butterfly eat God.
I guess you could say that, yeah. So, the turtle head is a food plant of the larva of this butterfly, and the significance of the eight-pointed star and the butterfly was something that Ira and you were talking about. And when I looked up the turtle in the dictionary, some symbolic concepts of the turtle stood out to me. I looked it up in one of my symbol books as well. Get this, the idioms of the turtle are to overturn, to distort, and to create chaos, which are the exact definitions of Prometheus or Lucifer, the false bearer of light, or the trickster.
Gotta love it. The turtle is also associated with the fortress type of mentality as well. That it's a fortress, a castling kind of situation.
You pull in your arms, your legs, and your head, and you can't be touched.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So all of these things associating together, that's a really fascinating find, Ryan. It really is. That's very cool.
You were talking about the turtle, being part of the creation myth. And I think back to an old rhyme that I heard many years ago. See the turtle of enormous girth. On his back he holds the earth. His thoughts are slow and always kind. He always holds me in his mind.
Absolutely. Stephen King, The
Thank
Dark
you,
Tower.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I was about to reference where I heard it. Thank you, Stephen, and the Dark Tower series.
But you see, one interesting little side note to this, Stephen King, when he wrote those books, he said he did not write those books. They wrote themselves. They literally poured themselves out of himself. And
he was hearing the song of the turtle.
Yes, he was hearing the sound of the song of the turtle is exactly how he quoted it. So, maybe there is something to this. I know that a lot of writers that are out there, when they do their writings, they really, I know it happens to me. It literally is a stream of consciousness.
Same exact thing firsthand. That's exactly what happened to me. 740 pages poured out in less than a month.
Maybe that's why I'm not a writer.
You're the warrior.
I'm a guy who I didn't want to read a short story in high school. I was too lazy to read 2 pages for homework, and then I've written 2 books now.
Oh, I love to read. I just can't write to save my soul. Ira's read my writing.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
Hey, some of my poems when I was doing photography were pretty good.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you. I have to do that. So, okay, let's get into the idea of all of this stuff being associated as well with Mary. We've touched on this a little bit, and I know that for when I was looking at things, I saw Mary like being associated in some really weird ways.
What were you telling me about Gilmore?
Okay, so Freddie Gray was arrested near the Gilmore homes. We found this article, and all of the articles that we talk about tonight, I'll have them linked up at the show notes for this show on my website. I'll give that link out here at the end of the show. But this was a public housing development. Now, Gilmore, it can be from the Irish or Scottish or Gaelic origin, meaning servant of the Virgin Mary.
Wow, so that's pretty significant, I think.
Yeah.
Intriguing, to say the least.
And that's just kind of where the Mary
Maryland,
starts.
Baltimore is literally right on the border between Virginia and Maryland. So you Virgin Mary, Gilmore. Wow. Okay, yeah.
What was it? What was it? The Gilmore? What kind of home was it?
It was called
Gilmore Homes.
Gilmore Homes. It was a low-income housing project, basically.
Okay, I see. Just things like that, to me, again, there's no coincidence. I might not be able to sit here and bang my fists on the table and tell you this is what's going on, but I can surely tell you that when I'm sitting here watching mainstream news, reading official reports, I can bang my fist on the table and tell you that's not what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. The official story is not the official.
No.
Well, I find it very interesting that today, everything that I saw today now you have to understand, Ryan, my dad is 83 years old. And the most prevalent channel watched in this house is Fox News. Or the Golf Channel, depending on the day. It's either Fox News or the Golf Channel.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, believe me, I'm immune. I've been fully inoculated. I'm immune. I watched a bit of it yesterday before I went to work just because I was interested in the pretty pictures. I tuned out the commentary and was just actually watching what was going on the screen. And that even was a pain in the neck. But the thing that really I found interesting today is they weren't talking about the destruction. They weren't talking about the loss of life. They weren't talking about the loss of property. Everybody was talking about today was that for the first time in the 144 season history of Major League Baseball, they were going to have a baseball game without fans.
Oh, the White Sox.
The Orioles White Sox game.
Yeah.
And for the first time in the 144 season history of the, professional baseball, they were going to have a baseball game without fans. That fans were going to be barred from the stadium.
Wow.
And my personal opinion of the matter is, one, who cares? Don't get me wrong. I love baseball. I'm actually a fan of the Chicago White Sox. If I were able to see them in person, that is. I won't watch baseball on television because it's bleeding boring. But there's something different about being in the stands. And secondly, what's the point? What's the point of playing a game of baseball, which is supposed to be a spectator sport, if there's no spectators?
With no spectators, exactly. Now, one thing I was just reminded as well, another correlation with Mary into all of this is the lawyer for Freddie Gray's family is named, get this, Mary Koch.
In relation to Ed?
I'm wondering if it's a relation to the Koch brothers, but, because...
Well, I'm wondering if it's any relation to Ed, as in the former mayor of New York.
Well, that could be, yeah. It could be.
Ed Koch?
Like I said, I mean, though, this is just another example of the weird synchronicities or synchromysticism even that comes into play with all of this stuff. None of this stuff is coincidental. You made a statement, Ryan, that I thought was just absolutely fabulous when we first started going into all of this. You said if this was not coincidental, then this means definitely that there is something behind the scenes pushing all of these events to occur in the way that they do, lining them up to have the names be the way that they are, the places being named the way that they are, the timing of everything. If it can't be coincidence. We know better than that. There's no coincidences. So what is it that's driving these things behind the scenes? Is this a matter of us falling into a pattern that another world has had, and we're just kind of falling into the pattern of it? Or is this sort of a weird predestiny kind of a thing that's going on?
I mean, personally, I think that's a question that would take several years to answer. I don't really know how I could even answer that question, because you'd have to get into the nature of reality. You'd have to have a very in-depth understanding, far more than I do, of occultic symbolism and perhaps even maybe some form of extraterrestrial entities, what you call demons, angels. That's a question I don't think I can even answer, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we see so much in this reality, but at the same time, we also see so little. We only see a small fraction of what actually happens. And there's got to be something going on behind the scenes, because events like this, when they transpire on specific dates, the fact that the simple fact that, for example, what I was saying earlier about the royal family, the fact that Prince William's birth was induced on the summer solstice, his son's birth was on the Sothic rising of Sirius. They got married on an astronomical alignment called the Royal Crown on a black and white Masonic floor with bishops who had these pentagram cloaks on. People that watch these music videos, for example, on YouTube. You sent me the new Madonna video called Ghost Town.
Yes.
I even, you suffered through it a little bit, but you watched the Taylor Swift video. I forget what it was called. And then there's another one, this Japanese group of girls. And when you watch some of these videos, it is mind control. I mean, there's no possible way, unless these singers and artists studied the occult from the time they were born, with the exception of like Florence and the Machine, who wanted to be a witch, that they would have any remote understanding of the symbolic nature of what they're singing about and the music videos that are being made. Somebody that's involved in those has a very complex and intelligent understanding of all of this. So much so where, people think that I'm some type of expert on these topics, and I'm really still just a novice. And I'm looking at these stories and videos, and I'm thinking, how is that possible to make a video like that, so symbolic, so important, and so relevant, and yet so dumbed down and so brainwashing in the sense that everybody just starts singing it? It's like a type of mind control. And I think that's what it really is. And when we relate that idea to what's happening in Baltimore, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, there's no way this just happens. There's no way that the musician just sits down, writes this song, and decides, oh, we're going to do this in the video. There's no way that this just happens. Rioters are going to riot. Situations are going to be had where there are political motives that are being pushed from the Obama administration, the mayor of Baltimore. But at the same time, there's something else going on here. Somebody or something in this or another dimensional plane of existence, again, we'd have to understand the nature of reality, and I don't really think we do, has some sort of hand in orchestrating these events for some type of ritualistic, sacrificial purpose. Again, I can't tell you why, but I can definitely look at the situation and tell you what's not real. And I can tell you that what's happening in Baltimore, a little bit of it, it's just, people going crazy. The rest of it, it's being co-opted and used for a much more darker and sinister purpose, to the likes of which we may never truly understand as long as we're alive.
Well, I know that what I think when it comes to like the videos that you were talking about there, they're so full of these symbols. Again, like I was referring to earlier, the whole symbology that gets tied to these other entities that are out there that I do know exist. We've encountered them over the years. You watch these videos, you see, like on YouTube, that one of these videos has like 100 million views. So over 100 million times these things have been watched. People are looking at these. They're not only getting programmed in their brain when they watch these things, because we know, I've talked to you about this before, Ryan, and I know I've talked to Joe about this before. We know that there are pre-programmed responses that happen in the human body when certain things are either seen or heard. They're triggered, whether you like it or not, and whether you really understand that or not. That's what ends up occurring. So you see these symbols on the screen. You see how Madonna is gyrating in front of you, but there's the checkerboard background that she's dancing on. Your eyes are watching this gyrating figure, but your consciousness is seeing the whole thing. It's seeing the whole picture. So all of it is entering into your consciousness. Your brain will discard out what it doesn't think is useful, but it still takes it in. And these things are triggered. So your responses to these watches of these videos, again, goes to feed these entities that are tied occultically to these different symbols. So if you watch it and you start feeling a passion or a lust or something like that because, ooh, she's hot, she's dancing on the screen, well, that emotion, that feeling is fed to the entity that has tied itself to that symbol.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. Well, listen, guys, we actually need to take the second break here real quick. When we come back, I definitely want to delve a lot more into all of this, because this is where it's starting to get really fascinating for me. It goes into crazy land, I think, but man, it really is interesting to me. So stick around with us, guys. We will be back. And again, if you want to give us a call, you're more than welcome to. We'll take it at 260-494-3937. That's 260-494-3937. Eyes. Make it nice and simple for you. Stick around. We'll be back in just a few minutes. The Late Night in the Midlands radio network is deeply devoted to you, the listener. We feel it is necessary to bring you all of the information that you can use in your life. Each and every day you will find something to listen to here. And whether you come away from the shows informed, inspired, or entertained, it is our passion. We don't bow to corporations, and we don't have handlers to tell us what not to talk about. We bring you everything. Late Night in the Midlands, however, is fully listener-supported. We need your help to stay on the air and to make sure that we get the bills paid. We need your help to keep the truth alive. If you feel that you have gotten anything out of Late Night in the Midlands, we would appreciate your support. You can become a subscriber and help us out on a monthly basis, or if you'd like, a one-time donation is fully appreciated as well. Every year, the average household in America spends over $3,000 on entertainment alone. If you could help us with just a tiny fraction of that amount, you would make all of the difference. Go to latenightinthemidlands.com and click on the subscribe button. Thank you, and as always, keep yourself informed.
Transmission.
So I'll admit it, I'm a geek. I love anything science fiction or fantasy. I love to collect things that are related to the things that I like. There's a place that I go to find unique things. It's an Etsy shop that's called The Geeky Stitcher. They have some amazing and one-of-a-kind handcrafted collectibles on a lot of my favorite science fiction and fantasy-related shows and movies. You know, geek stuff. They have things like gloves that look just like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. They have crocheted figures from Star Trek, Disney movies, even Navi from The Legend of Zelda. They're all made with love, and they have a unique style, and best of all, they're cheaply priced. They'll even do custom orders. All you have to do is let them know what you would like to see made, and they'll get right on it. Check them out today at thegeekystitcher.etsy.com, or you can also go to their Facebook fan page, which is found at The Geeky Stitcher. Go there today. I'm sure you guys will find something that you would really, really love. Brothers at Arms is not about being militant, though there is a time and place where that is necessary. Brothers at Arms is not about arguing, though there are times where things may get heated. Brothers at Arms is not about who is right or wrong. There are many sides to each issue. Brothers at Arms is about exploring those sides, about dealing with the issues facing us today, about coming together and, through opposing views, understanding the deeper truths that are in the middle. Join Ira Robinson and Joe Long each Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on latenightinthemidlands.com as these Brothers at Arms discuss what you need to know. Brothers at Arms, it's about time. Well, hello there, and welcome back to Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson, and I want to thank you guys for sticking around through that long break there. This has been an interesting night. We are doing this live and in person, and you can call in yourself. The number is 260-494-3937. Don't be afraid to call. None of us bite too hard. So I am here tonight with Ryan Gable, the host of The Secret Teachings, which can be found at thesecretteachings.info, as well as Joe Long, which can be found at my website, openeyesnetwork.com. He's the co-host of mine with Brothers at Arms, which airs on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. So, guys, before we took the break, we were talking about some of the weird esoteric stuff going on with Baltimore, and we actually had a question come in from the chat room. I have my own thoughts on this, but I'd like to get the thoughts of you guys first. The question is, do you think that anything here in Baltimore is related to the whole Jade Helm thing that is at least said to be upcoming? Ryan, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah, I definitely do. And at first, I was a little bit skeptical of that. But then, of course, I thought back and I was thinking of, some of the different situations that have transpired in the past few years, even going back to 9/11, as a matter of fact, that there were the drills that were being conducted as the event took place, so as to discombobulate law enforcement and the military and those people who would typically act to keep others safe or to act in the case of an emergency. And what we saw in the case of Jade Helm is that there are a lot of people who are concerned about this. There's 7 southwestern states, and there are 1,200 military special ops personnel who have gone to these seven states, and it's a part of a domestic training exercise for the military to kind of operate undetected among civilians. And one of the things that I was reading was that Jade Helm, one of the aspects of this drill was to quarantine in a sense, or to create districts within certain cities, certain states, and to use those districts, kind of like the Hunger Games, to extract political dissidents, anarchists, whatever the case might be, from that particular city. Now, I saw that and I was thinking, oh, that's really, really interesting. I wonder what that's all about. And as I'm thinking that, Ira, you mentioned to me that you see something on the news. We were doing this live. We were talking live as this was happening on the news. And we see something on the news that said something about Baltimore being broken up into sectors.
Yes.
And right, and it's a direct correlation to Jade Helm. It's a drill that's being run when during the Beltane Festival, an event of that nature actually takes place. That's the connection.
Yes.
And I mean, the last thing I think I can add to that is, I'm watching the news on the little TV I have while I'm talking to you, and I'm thinking all those people that said you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a nut job, you're a wacko, they're not going to use these military cars and these tanks in the streets of America. It's all for show of muscle. And then I'm watching CNN, and lo and behold, rolling down the street, armored vehicles, tank-like military vehicles that the police are using. The National Guard is enforcing a curfew in Baltimore. Let me tell you something. Looking at Jade Helm and looking at what's happened with Sandy Hook and Christopher Dorner, the Boston bombing, every time this happens, it gets a little bit worse than the time before. Every time this happens, we hear about how we need a little bit more protection. The next step in this is going to be the military intervening in this situation, and before you know it, you're going to start seeing blue hats or blue helmets on the street. That's to me the most logical step forward from here.
Great thoughts on that, Ryan. I am in agreement with you on those things, and I'll add again after I get Joe's opinion. Joe, what do you think?
Oh, I agree with Ryan. I believe this is not the first time this has happened, that they have a drill planned and all of a sudden, mysteriously, coincidentally, and yes, I'm making air quotes, people, even though you can't see them, an event that they're drilling for happens. Amazing. Where's my duct tape? I need my duct tape.
You need your duct tape. Yeah, you forgot to load it tonight, didn't you?
I'll make sure I've got plenty of it loaded for tomorrow because I guarantee you we are still going to be talking about this tomorrow. But, you know, I've used this quote before. It's almost becoming a weekly quote. And people, you need to listen to this, and you need to really, really, really understand what I'm saying here. Those that sacrifice liberty for the sake of security deserve neither liberty nor security, nor will they have it.
Absolutely. So my thoughts are essentially along the lines of you guys. Yes, I definitely think that it is related. I think that it's tied directly to it. And then also I can delve a little bit into the more subtle things, the more hidden things that go on with all of this. You sort of mentioned it a little bit there, Ryan, when you mentioned the Hunger Games. What I see ending up happening a lot of times in this world, the way that this reality works, we are essentially taking part in basically a consensus reality. That's how I see things. I've talked about it on my show quite a few times. I definitely will talk about it again in the future. But what I see is people put energy into something and they create it. That's essentially how it works, the nutshelled version of it. And when we focus on really, really, hyper popular books where millions of people are reading them and putting emotional content into them, focusing on them, millions of people being fans of a movie or a television show or anything like that, they create it. They're creating this vision basically. And whether it happens on this world or in another reality somewhere, one way or the other, it comes to fruition. So what we see is incidents like, for example, the Hunger Games, where these concepts are put into place. The books are written, they're put out into the popular culture. Millions upon millions of people read them, have put into the consensus of reality, the idea that this is happening. And it's being created, essentially, is what it comes down to.
Especially with something like the Hunger Games, because it's putting it in, it's targeting and putting it into the hands of some of the most powerful of the imaginations of our culture,
which would be the
putting
children.
It into the young.
Exactly.
And they're
hyper creative in and of themselves.
As an older generation, our imaginations have become less powerful, but our imaginations are tempered by our experiences. They are tempered by the world that we have had to slog and battle through, where you're young, you're 13 to 18-year-olds, which is what the Hunger Games are targeted at, don't have that. Their imaginations are really all that they have. And that is what their whole world is consisted of, is that what they can imagine it to be. And they can imagine limitless. And it puts out so much more. It's so much more. What is the word I'm trying? Vibrant.
Yeah.
It's so much more untarnished by the quote unquote real world.
Now, my daughter asked, as I was speaking about all of that, so why am I not a wizard yet? Because she's such a fan of Harry Potter.
Tell Crystal, yeah, she already is.
Actually, that would be the Beth.
True. Oh, it's Beth that it. Why does that not surprise me? That does not surprise. She's a witch.
Yeah.
Your daughter is a witch.
Exactly.
I've seen her do things.
My kids have the woo-woo powers, the Robinson stuff. So, okay, so that covers the idea of why we think.
If we're living in a consensus reality, why am I not Christian Grey?
There you go. So, what we see happening as well, though, is this created reality is used like I think, and I fully believe that the Dark Masters, those who are really the puppet masters behind the strings, not the presidents, not even the people in the Trilateral Commissions and the Bilderbergs and all that kind of stuff. There are people that are behind them as well. It's a pyramid structure, We are the proles. We're way down at the bottom of the feeding pole right here. But the further you go up, there are those that are up and up and up. So at the top of the thing, who knows exactly what's up there, but I don't think that it's anything in this world or in this reality, really. Kind of going into crazy land there. But what I see basically is that these entities do orchestrate things because they understand that this is how reality really does work. So they put into place these different things like this Baltimore stuff, like those drills that you guys were talking about, to focus energy onto things and essentially be fed.
You know, something else I just found. Remember we were talking about the royal connection to this?
Yeah.
Okay,
there's
so
a big one.
The House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, the German bloodline. These, well, I'll tell you what, this is I just literally found this out live while we're on radio. I'm looking, and apparently May 5th is the anniversary of the wedding between Kate and William. And can you guess which anniversary this is, Ira?
Let's see. Would this be the 13th?
4th.
No, it'd be the 4th. Yes, it'd be the 4th. Yeah.
The 4th. Yeah. So I guarantee you that's the reason we've got this number 4 symbolic, at least being pushed. I think that's my personal opinion. And then, of course, they announced, the media put out in London that Kate was overdue by 4 days to having the new baby, which would have put the birth date originally on the 19th of April, which is literally the official start of the Beltane Festival.
Okay, I just got to say this. Kate Middleton, attractive woman that she is, has to be the most unlucky woman with pregnancies, because I've had 2 children. Not me personally, but I have 2 children. My first son, they didn't have to induce, and he was about a week late. My daughter was delivered by a C-section, and she was early. I've never heard of a woman having to have 2 children induced.
Well, see, the reason why they're inducing is to get it so that the timing is perfect. They have all of these things laid out.
Ira.
I know you're being facetious with it, but
yes, I was putting it out there like, okay, really, you can't come up with you can't come up, okay, we're going to induce her, but we're going to tell everybody she had it without induction? Come on.
But that's the game that they like to play.
I'm just a simple druid warrior here, and I can figure that out. You got people out there that are media moguls that are like, oh yeah, we're going to tell the whole world she's had her second child induced. They won't figure it out.
But the problem is most people won't. I mean, most people don't pay attention to these things that are behind the scenes. They don't delve any deeper basically than beer and football. And there's nothing wrong with beer and football, Joe.
I was about to say.
Don't get on me. But you know what I'm talking about. You, as a fan of beer and football, do delve into the deeper things. Most people, they spend their lives under so much stress that they can't do anything but concentrate on being entertained, because they have to have some kind of release from the stress that these, again, powers that be like us to be under. When you're under stress, your brain gets smaller. You cannot think as efficiently, and you cannot think as well or as clearly. So why do they do it? Well, because they want us to not be able to think clearly and logically and all of that stuff.
Listen, I'll tell you something right now. I know, Joe, you're a fan of football. Michael's a fan of football and L&M. Guys, I'm watching the Game 7 of the Tampa Bay Lightning NHL hockey game right now while we're having this discussion. I can watch this and still have this discussion at the same time. So distractions are not a bad thing. It's how much energy and how much time and attention you put into those distractions that can lead them to misleading you from the truth and from what your true purpose is here on Earth.
Oh, I agree.
Absolutely.
Now, don't get me wrong. When it comes to my Green Bay Packers, I'll watch them every chance I get. But once that game is over, that's a nice 2.5 hour distraction. Once that's over, it's like, okay, I do believe we have a show to do.
Yeah, right. I mean, because that there's things that are much more important or just as equally important in terms of what you have to do, especially
exactly.
Being aware of the way in which reality works and the way in which the things that we're dealing with. And when I just looking at the news and seeing exactly what we're talking about. This is their 4th wedding anniversary. The baby's 4 days late, and seeing the correlation with the 19th, the beginning of the Beltane Festival. To really believe that all of this is made up, to believe that Prince William has to have his birth induced from Lady Diana on the summer solstice. His son's birth was had on the Sothic rising of Sirius. They were married on a rare astronomical alignment, and now the new baby, his birth date was supposed to be the beginning of the Beltane Festival, and now they're going to induce birth at the end of the Beltane Festival when it calls for a sacrifice of a child. I'm in some rites. I mean, it's beyond not a coincidence. I mean, it's just blatantly right there. You want to take some people's faces and just rub it into the carpet when it comes to this thing.
The thing is, I'm worried about, and you're right, in some perversions of the Beltane Festival, they do call for the sacrifice of a child.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, are they going to sacrifice? Is there going to be complications and the baby die?
There's a problem, and the baby ended up dying on May Day, on and on and on. Yeah.
Yep. That's a possibility. Yeah. And I also see the possibility that there's a headline out now in London that this is going to be a May baby. And from what I understand, maybe I'm wrong, we're not aware of the sex of this child yet, are we?
No. The odds and Ira and I discussed this on Brothers in Arms last week, I believe. Why is it that that everybody in this country is so fixated, obsessed with the royals and the baby, to the point that odds makers in Vegas and in Atlantic City are taking bets on date of birth, age, or weight, sex, hair color, name. It's like, really? You're going to throw your money away on that? Right. If you want to throw your money away on that, here's my address. Send it to me.
Yeah, I can most definitely make use of it here.
I think that, well, let me just give you this real quick. If this is a big deal they're making about a May baby, it'll probably, because of the significance with May, the mother, Mary, it'll probably be a little girl. But the problem
that's what the odds are on it right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's almost a guarantee.
And you want to know what the odds are for the name? If I remember right,
I didn't hear
Sarah. The leading odds on the name, I believe, are Sarah and Mary.
Wow. And you know where she's in the hospital? St. Mary's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Now, we had a question come in again from the chat. Nobody's calling, but they're asking in the chat, so I guess that's good enough.
They're scared of us.
They're scared of me. So one question is, with all the genetic manipulation that's been going on, is it possible that what they're doing is like trying to create almost like a version of the super soldiers, but doing it with the royals, not super soldiers, but super royals kind of thing?
It could be.
Huh. I don't know. I'm not sure who asked that and how they perceive that terminology, super soldier. I don't really think so. I think it's more along the lines of, these people have been around, their beliefs have been around for a very long time. They're not as corrupted, if you will, by, the education that people like us get. So they've got a completely different belief system. I mean, simply having that kind of wealth, you live so much differently. You don't understand, like George Bush, the father, he goes to the supermarket and he's like, what's that red light there? He's never seen a checkout light before because he's never been to the supermarket. These people,
I love that story.
Right? They live completely different lives than we do.
Their servants have servants to do things for them.
Oh, yeah, literally. There are so many different people that are paid like 6-figure incomes that stand in the queen's closet and hand her, dress her. And that's their job.
There's ones that have 6-figure salaries that collect her poop.
Yeah, literally
collect her poop out of the toilet.
So these people live different lives. They have beliefs that
I don't even want to know.
Maybe this is why they have so much power, because of the significance of certain days and certain times that they try to orchestrate events to match up with. Whether that's the case or not, they surely believe it. Otherwise, why do it?
the thing that I don't believe they're trying to create a super royal. I believe that the genetic manipulation is there. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest. But if it's there for anything, it's for longevity, to keep the royals alive longer.
Well, they can do that through.
Look at Queen Elizabeth II, Ryan.
Oh,
how old is that woman? How old is that woman? I mean, I think Methuselah was younger than this woman.
Well, hey, Joe, that scientists at the University of Stanford showed that by injecting old rats with the blood of young rats, that it rejuvenates the old rat's blood, and it rejuvenates and begins to rebuild their organs, and it reverses the aging process.
Yeah, Ira and we discussed that a couple of weeks ago on Open Eyes, when I was the last time I was with him on Open Eyes. And it doesn't shock me. I mean, he even told me that, Lady Diana, not long before she was killed, and yes, what happened to Lady Diana was no accident. She was murdered.
Sacrifice.
Pure and simple, she was murdered. So was Dodi Fayed. That she came out and said, these people are not human. They drink blood. I don't know what they are, but they're not human. And Ira, you're the one that told me that.
Yeah.
It's true. She had many confidants. She told things. I mean, she had to hide away. They had MI5 all over that woman. They sacrificed her, and the video cameras to the tunnels were turned off. Everything. Just like 9/11, all the security footage was confiscated. She bled out in the tunnel, the Ponte Alma tunnel, which in some translations means bridge of the moon goddess. Mm-hmm. Diana is a moon goddess, goddess of the hunt, goddess of birth. She bleeds out in the tunnel in the same manner as a lot of these. The Merovingian line, if I pronounce it right, the Merovingians, they founded the city of France. And that location where she died was actually an old battlefield where the kings used to fight, and they believed that if they died in battle, they would immediately ascend into heaven as a star, which is an old belief that goes back into the Egyptian times, back into the beliefs in South America. I mean, we're dealing with really, really ancient knowledge that maybe even precedes our planet. I mean, it might go to other planetary bodies before humans even formed. It's very, very ancient knowledge. And I think in some way, maybe it's just perceptually, it gives these people power, holding it over others who are not aware of it. I mean, the simple fact that historically it's well known that the royals have on many occasions consumed blood, just drinking it out of a glass. Queen Victoria used to drink blood out of a skull when she went to Tibet. Queen Bathroy, the Countess, she would sacrifice, chambermaids and bathe in their blood because she believed it reversed the aging process. And then we have scientists in the mainstream that can prove this. And there was a book written a year or two ago about how the royals eat flesh and drink blood, but don't worry, it was just about 300 years ago that they stopped doing this. They didn't stop.
No,
they keep on right on going.
Maggie, especially
in the
royal lines of England, because, and this is a topic I would love to bring up on Brothers at Arms sometimes, that the royal line of England is protected by a well-structured and well-ordered Masonic line that's sole purpose is the protection, preservation, and keeping the secrets of the Stuart and Windsor lines.
And you know what? This royal family connection to Baltimore, I think, is extremely significant because if you really look, guys, Ira, you mentioned to me that Baltimore is the sister city of Luxor, right?
Yeah, Luxor. Yep, in Egypt. Yep.
And that means light.
Yes.
The version of fire. For example, a variation of that word, Lexington Market was one of the locations in Baltimore where the police converged on these protesters. And one of the first battles of the American Revolution was actually fought in Lexington. Right. So
shots of the American Revolution, Lexington and Concord.
Lexington and Concord. That was on
Both of them?
April 19th, the day that this baby was supposed to be born, the beginning of the Beltane Festival.
Yeah.
I'm
Both
telling
of
you
them in
guys, it's not a coincidence.
No, it's not. It definitely is not. There is so much that goes into this really seriously occultic stuff involved with this. This is, I mean, look, you people out there that are listening, I know a lot of my listeners are in complete agreement with us with this, but if you're not, you guys need to really start doing a lot more research into this historical stuff. The way that all of this stuff is tying together in the cycles of history. We're not crazy with it. There is no way. This cannot be just a coincidence. And if you try to write it off as such, you're the crazy one. You've got to have some kind of cognitive dissonance going on to be able to look at all of it and say, oh, nothing like that is happening. There's no way. You have to be crazy to believe that. Now, one thing, in the chat room, Maggie in the chat room said that when it comes to all of this stuff, she believes that a lot of times what they do is they try to force these old ancient prophecies to come true. And I do think that there is definitely something to that a lot of times what we see happening is force of these prophecies to happen. But because they're in the consciousness of man, people look at it and they say, okay, well, there must definitely be that there, you know? It happened because it was meant to happen. No, it happened because they forced it to happen.
That's a really interesting topic. I've gotten into many an argument with very religious Christian Bible thumpers about that before. They'll say, I'll say something along those lines, and I'll say, I think a lot of these people are trying to, force these predictions to come true, and it's like a, personally fulfilled prophecy. And what I see happening is that when I tell someone like that, they say, "Oh, well, that just means that the prophecy was true." Which, in my mind, what they're seeing is basically, their own version of fulfilled prophecy to prove their beliefs in whatever deities they believe in. What I see it more as is that what we see as prophecies are not prophecies predicting the future. They're past historical events and esoteric events that are very symbolic. And what's happening in Baltimore, what's happened in other situations here in the U.S. and around the world, they happen on certain days, certain times, energy vortexes in certain regions of the planet. It's not prophecies being fulfilled. It's what we call prophecies, but historical events in one way, shape, or form being reenacted on these locations to perhaps summon some type of entity, to conjure some type of spirit, whatever the case may be. But it's not a prediction of the future. It's a reenactment of the past.
And that goes into the idea that we were talking about a couple of days ago, Ryan, of the time wave zero thing and how the cycle of history basically is not only repeating, but it's getting faster and faster as we're reaching some kind of an end point somewhere down the line, wherever that end point may be. Well, listen, guys, we've only got like a few minutes left here. But I wanted to give you guys a chance to get in some final words. Joe, why don't you give us your kind of final thoughts on this topic, whatever topic it is that you want to cover that we've been talking about so far tonight. So,
topic, what topic? We've been going all over the place. But as far as the past events, and I agree with Ryan that this is not prophecy, and this is history coming back and repeating itself over and over. But people need to look around them. Pick your head up out of the latest, pulp trash novel. Pull your head out of Honey Boo Boo or The Duggars or Survivor or whatever slop that they are shoving into your brain, and start looking around. Look around and try to figure out what's going on, what really is going on, not just on the surface, not just below the surface. I mean, really what's going on as deep down as you are able to dig. Because like Ryan said, we're not really going to ever be able to get to the core root because it's going to take more time and more ability than we as human beings have at the moment.
Multiple lifetimes.
As always, don't be afraid. don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe in, and don't be afraid to just look at somebody who's trying to push you down and control you and laugh in their face and say, I don't need you. You may go now.
That's great. Ryan, you've got about 1 minute.
Okay, I'll see what I can do in a minute. I just wanted to say that kind of what I say at the end of all of my shows on the Secret Teachings, do the research for yourself, do the math for yourself, use critical thinking and logic, and try to connect the dots that we've connected tonight between seemingly unconnected people, places, and events. And when you look at this situation where it looks so chaotic in Baltimore, instead of it being chaotic and you don't really understand what's going on, you think it's all about race, it'll start to make a lot more sense. And the last comment I have is that, these shirts that say Black Lives Matter, I completely disagree with this. All lives matter, not just whites, not just blacks. More blacks are killed by blacks and more whites are killed by whites. Let's take the blinders off and realize that this is not about race. This is something a little bit darker that we're dealing with, and we need to become aware of it, and we need to access the true light rather than being held down by the darkness with the fear of what could be hiding on the other side.
Absolutely in agreement with both of you on all of the points, man. This has been a great show. It's gone so fast. I did not expect that it was going to go so quickly, but I hope that all of you guys out there have enjoyed it. This has definitely been a really special episode. I think I'm going to do things live a little bit here from now on. I'm kind of digging this. This has been pretty cool. I think I'm going to be addicted to it. If you guys out there want to go to the show notes for this show, you can go to openeyesnetwork.com/OE100. My 100th show. Woohoo! If you want to go to my Facebook or my Twitter, I am at Open Eyes Network or Ira Robinson on both of those platforms. If you want to send me an email on any topic, send it to feedback@openeyesnetwork.com. Tomorrow, don't forget to tune in. We are going to be broadcasting Brothers at Arms. It will be Joe and I having another discussion. We'll probably talk a little bit about the topics that we talked about here tonight as well. And it should be very interesting. Don't forget to tune in to Ryan Gable's show. It is Sunday nights starting at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can also find him on his website, thesecretteachings.info. It's always a great, interesting listen to Ryan. He's a font of knowledge, to say the least. Make sure you stay tuned on Friday as well, starting at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Eyes. My next episode, I will have Landy Cryer on. She is a anti-vaccine advocate, and she is also a wealth of information. We had a great interview, and I'm really excited to bring it to you guys. As well as on Monday's show, I will have Maggie Hart back on, as well as Chris Perry, and we're going to continue our talk that we had before on my show about the visions of the end. So a big exciting rest of the week and into next week for you guys. Until next time, guys, keep safe out there and have fun, and thank you so much for listening.